We are in quite the season right now, and in the midst of our own journey, we are getting questions in from you listeners. So this week we're going to answer a question about navigating our judgment of others and our desire to fix those things. And in light of where we're at in our own life, sometimes things just can't be fixed. So what do we do about it? We'll talk about it today.
Mama says namaste. Mama says namaste.
Making a family can be easy and fun.
Oh yeah, but raising a family can be a whole different story.
From spouses to kids to the crazy daily grind, life often directs us away from connection and more into reactive chaos.
If you're tired of that cycle and are seeking something beyond the picket fence blues, this is the show for you.
I'm Ashley.
And I'm Nathan.
And we're here to take you from chaos to clarity by bringing awareness and intention into your home, not waiting for one day, and highlighting how
the uniqueness in each of us strengthens all of us.
Take a deep breath in and let's start a brand new day. With Mama says namaste.
I'm glad that we're doing these every other week right now. Boy, it seems like quite an effort to try to get the logistics and get it all set up right now.
Are you meaning we didn't do this last week?
No.
Oh, wow.
I know. There's lots of moving parts in our life right now. And for those of you who listened to last week's episode, you know some of that as we're kind of in this journey of walking my father home in his last stages of pancreatic cancer that has gone much faster than we ever anticipated since he just got his diagnosis on December 7th. And as I'm recording this, it is January 19th, and he is definitely nearing the end at this point. And we're at the point of not having much, there's no lucid conversation that's going on.
A lot of sleeping, small bursts of interaction, and then rest. But it's been a good time to reflect on, kind of our experience with him and our life with him.
Right. And so 2 weeks ago, I talked about wanting to answer your questions and wanting to navigate more listener questions and how much we love that. So I got one in that I thought was great, not only to answer the question, but also to kind of reinforce the legacy that Dad has instilled in me that I want to carry on, and share a quote that he actually shared recently with his dear circle of friends as a quote that means so much to him, and it's been a quote that's been kind of my guiding light since I was a teenager. So first off, the question is, and I put it from Miss Fix-It today, and I so can empathize with Miss Fix-It because this was me years ago. Hey, I'm working on it. But this was me when I was young, and I educated myself so much in the things I was passionate about with psychology and parenting and family and all of these different things. I had all the answers. Right. And so it was, So anyway, before I go any further, I'm just going to go into what the question is. So here's what I got. I have a lot of strong opinions on ethical parenting and family planning decisions, which have admittedly come primarily from seeing examples I want to avoid. I'm really struggling with judgment and frustration toward people in my life who are making different choices and seeing the impact on their children. I've recently been unable to shake pretty intense feelings of judgment toward others regarding this topic, and I would love to hear how you navigate that as a conscious and intentional parent. First off, thanks for calling us conscious and intentional parents. I have to say that, we work hard to be conscious and intentional, and we mess up. We're reactive, just like other parents. We have those moments.
Yeah. It's a razor's edge line.
Right. The fact that we can talk about it, though, and just recognize that we're teaching our kids regardless. So the more we can kind of err on the intentional teaching versus the unintentional, ooh, they saw that, the better. So we try to really work on that. So as far as this question is, I mean, like I said, I so remember struggling with this. And because of this and having a hard time seeing how other people parent their kids, that was something that, even brought up as far as foster care is concerned. I thought about doing that at one point and thought, I don't know if I could handle, having a child and sending them back into what I knew was going to be a toxic environment for them.
Which we experienced some of this as preschool teachers early in our relationship. I guess we were dating at the time. And, we had some students, or a student that was, on the edge of our comfort zone. And, you have to make that call on whether you call and bring that to light and discuss that or not. And that's, it's a very personal and difficult decision because we all come from different parenting styles. We all come from a different kind of thread. And so, it's important to remember that. And when there's true abuse happening, it's important to stand up and say something as well.
Right. So I guess we have a disclaimer here that as we go into what my steps are and our kind of our answer for this question, we're not saying, don't call out something that you see as truly as a harmful situation. Unfortunately, many of us are very aware of how messed up the systems are, that it almost is, there's not a whole lot that can be done sometimes unless something horrible happens. And it can get really overwhelming, and you can feel really helpless in it. And that's where we've had to look in our desire, just like Miss Fix-It here, to see children raised in as much love and support as they can. We've had to navigate how can we cope when we can't steal every child and have them our own.
Yes.
We can't take every child in and raise them the right way. And the truth is, that, like you have always said, what's your line? You're always
which
what?
One?
I know. You're
always a genius today.
That's right. You're always a genius today. And I thought I was positive I was going to, completely rock parenting, and I would know exactly what to do because of all of my years of babysitting and being a nanny and being in childcare and being a preschool teacher and being a camp counselor. And I thought, I have got it. And then,
and I was totally excited about having children because I was married to this person who had all the answers
was
to
the
raise.
expert.
She was the expert. We had nothing to be worried about.
until we became a parent.
Until we became a parent and realized how wrong really both of us were. I came into it with the same attitude of, I know what I'm doing, I think.
We both, and I'm grateful for the experience that we had. Yes, we definitely had experience with a wide variety of kids. And it's different when you are the parent and you're making the health decisions for that child. You're making the educational decisions, the disciplinary decisions.
Yeah. Well, and just switching from I remember being a preschool teacher and having those thoughts of ooh, I will never do that with my children, or I will never be spoken to that way. Uh-huh. And to some degree, there is some truth to that. And yet, as I became a parent, I realized that I did not have the full spectrum, the 24-hour perspective of the decision, or even the lack thereof that got to the now that I'm seeing. And so I think from a very
that's a good point to say that sometimes what we've recognized, and this is off of what I've written in my blog with this, is that we can fix from our perspective. And
coming from a cool, calm, collective stage,
right?
I would never lure a child in to the car with candy because I'm needing to go. And
coming from the frazzled, stressed out parent with 5,000 things going on.
And the last thing I want to do is negotiate for 20 minutes because I know that's going to come.
Yeah.
Here's some worms, gummy worms.
You can get in the car.
You can get them in the back seat. Come and get them, baby. And so, there is didn't your mom have a story of that in the checkout or grocery store?
Well, I had talked with her about it because we were at Costco one day and there was a lady with a little kid who was being awful. He was just screaming and just being a real holy terror in the grocery cart. And we watched as this mom went over to the bakery where there were cookies and handed her son a cookie. And mom said, I just can't believe she'd do that. And, that just is enabling that boy to continue like that. Mm-hmm. And I turned to her and I said, you don't know what their story is. And at this point, I had been kind of in the thick of working with some families that had some children on the autism spectrum. Mm-hmm. and acting out and having tantrums and fits and things, you don't necessarily know what's going on. Is this a nonverbal child and this is they're reacting and the mom is at their wit's end? Did their mom is she navigating, a spouse at home with pancreatic cancer, and she's just desperate for any moment of peace. We don't know what their stories are. So we're always looking at things from our perspective. So when we see that opportunity to fix something, recognize we're fixing from one perspective.
And our way of thinking that it's right is definitely our way. I mean, from a lot of perspectives, I think that the way we make our cake, I've talked about the batter of life and how, there's certain things that you like to have every day that create a nice flow. That's a consistent cake that's nice and, a life that you enjoy. And it's a very personal thing, I mean, even as I look at, the lifestyle that we live, and I feel like we have a very loving and healthy relationship. And I look at your parents and they have a very loving and healthy relationship, but the minutia that they go through to have that relationship is nothing that I would ever want to touch or do, if that makes sense. Like the process of that relationship is very different from our process of our relationship. And so, it's just, it's kind of understanding that there's a lot of different ways to do life, and understand that if you kind of are coming from that attitude of, well, we're all kind of ripening and learning at different stages too, and having that understanding and that compassion. I was reading in this book or listening to this book on letting go, and he has a great section on the back that's just talking about the process of our mindset. And he's saying that, in truth, as humans, we all know what's going on and what people are thinking about us, because what's going on in our heads comes out in our body language and the way we treat people. So if we see a parent that's got a kid that's, acting out, and we're all got our arms crossed and we're glaring at them like, when you going to get it under control, cowboy? That type of energy can possibly be crushing for that person, and just magnify the difficulty of the situation, versus having compassionate people looking at you and saying, yeah, I understand. Sometimes those days just come along. How can I help you? Can I help you get your groceries out to the shop? Those are two totally different energies. But in this book, you're saying that you can't really lie to anybody, because everybody knows everybody knows how, by the way they're treated by others, what people think of them. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So what's going on in your head, you're really not keeping secret. Everybody knows that you're judging the situation. Right. Everybody knows that you don't like what's happening, whether you put off that air, you think you're putting off that air or not. And so it's just a good reminder that, as we are seeing situations that may challenge or rub against what we think is normal or should be responsible behavior, maybe that person is just on that path to figuring out how to manage themselves responsibly. And we all were there at one point. At one point, I was not able to do it myself. Just because I'm there and somebody else isn't, it's not really fair, right? You like things fair. So, it's not really fair to kind of box that person in the story that we write.
Right. So how do we change that? I mean, what you're just talking about is the fact that it comes out in our energy anyway with us judging. So how can we shift that judgment? Perspective shifts are huge. And so we've got 3 tools that we have used to help us shift out of judgment so that we can love in a different way. Because it's not just hiding your judgment. It's how can we shift out of it? So the first one is based on a quote, and this quote is a quote that, of all the gazillion quotes that my father has either said or that he has shared, because he's such a quotes guy, just like I am. This is the one he shared with his group of friends that came to visit right here at the end, as he was kind of talking about his legacy. And it has been my guiding light since I first read this when I was a teenager. And this was actually inscribed on the tomb of an Anglican bishop in in Westminster Abbey, and I don't remember how long ago it was, but a long, long time ago. It says, "When I was young and free and my imagination had no limits, I dreamed of changing the world. As I grew older and wiser, I discovered the world would not change, so I shortened my sights somewhat and decided to change only my country. But it too seemed immovable. As I grew into my twilight years, in one last desperate attempt, I settled to change only my family, those closest to me. But alas, they would have none of it. And now I realize, as I lie on my deathbed, if I had only changed myself first, then by example, I might have changed my family. From their inspiration and encouragement, I would have then been able to better my country. And who knows, I might have even changed the world." It is hard to reach people from the big picture down. Mm-hmm. And so often we have the idea of what that utopian family looks like, that perfect parenting style, that perfect way our state or our country or our world is in, and we look at that really big feature, and it can be, I mean, I think about that right now with all of the chaos going on in our world and all the division in our world, and the climate that's, all the climate disasters that are going on, and the wars that are going on, and the politics and the greed and all of these things. I mean, where do I start? I want to fix everything. I want world peace. How in the world am I going to get world peace by looking at everything? It's too overwhelming. And so I look at this quote and I see, oh, wait a second. I know where to start. I can start with me. And these are some other ones that have also spoken to me in my life. Be the change you wish to see in the world. That's Gandhi. Preach, and if necessary, use words. I think that was St. Francis of Assisi. Let your life speak. I just blanked on who that one was. Let your life speak. Your actions are speaking so loudly that I can't hear what you are saying. The best way to change the world is one living room at a time. So think about that and what is truly in your control. Where can you do your greatest work? There's some, like a quick example of this, and I've shared with this one on the on here that before. I dreamed of having a house full of readers and having all of my girls reading, and I ended up facing this frustration day in and day out where they wake up and they're looking over my shoulder at my phone and they're not reading. I'm like, what the heck are you doing? As I'm on my phone in the morning.
Right, acting like daddy.
And so I did one little shift. I stopped nagging the family, and I started getting up in the morning with my book and a cup of tea and reading. And lo and behold, I had some little followers in our house, and all of a sudden everybody started picking up their book and reading in the morning. And I recognized how much more magical it was, and how it was way more longer lasting because it was internally motivated by what they observed and what they saw and were inspired by, as opposed to me shoulding on them and telling them you must read, you have to read, or forcing them to do it.
So sometimes it's just changing your approach and your behavior to the situation that can help facilitate that change. The other thing is, sometimes when you're feeling those big emotions and that strong, like, ooh, that makes me angry when somebody does that, that can kind of derail you and take you into a storytelling kind of situation where you write a big story. And stopping yourself in that and just sitting with that feeling and letting it be there, because eventually you'll just kind of burn out just like a candle. Like, you're not going to stay in an intense state of rage for 5 hours. It's usually no more than 15 or 20 minutes. And so if you can find the space just to sit with that, you might find that it starts to slow down, and that, coupled with kind of reframing the way you see some of that behavior, can really help to mitigate some of the anger and frustration that we can see in the world. Because it can be frustrating when you see somebody trotting all over a garden and they don't know that it's a garden. They just see it as a continuation of the yard.
Well, that takes us into number 2. So the first one is recognizing you are the change to see in the world. It's looking at what is within your control and you personally, and how you choose to represent yourself, how you choose to show yourself to others and present yourself to others. That's the number one change maker in your world. That's going to make the biggest ripple effect and the biggest impact. Number 2, then, what we talk about is don't take it personally. And that's this, taking offense that somebody else trampled on the garden when you don't recognize the fact that that person was blind and didn't see the garden path.
Right.
Or that they, for whatever reason, they missed something, they didn't see it, it was a mistake. Or maybe it was, their frustration because their mother grew poppies and they had an issue with their mother and they stomped on the poppies.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of stories that could could have nothing to do with you. And I share on the blog post that goes with this. And yes, I wrote a long blog post before we recorded this podcast with these points in there. And I have links to 2 critical videos that I share frequently that are so helpful in just understanding this space. And this one is Frederick Imbo did a TED Talk on how to not take things personally. And it's wonderful. And he talks a lot about how oftentimes it's not about you. And oftentimes the things that we take offense to are somebody else's journey. Yeah. And it doesn't have anything to do with us.
I remember I had a young employee when I was at the bank who was getting cussed out, or just, the person behind the desk or on the other side, the customer was very kind of rude and short. Wasn't being an absolute jerk, but as soon as he, the other my employee kind of threw it into defensive, it's obvious that he had taken offense, and he communicated that with his body language and voice. It just ratcheted up and things. And I was talking to him about it, and he said, what gives him the right to come in and fight? It's like, at some point you have to ask yourself, where is he coming from to be in that kind of state? Like, I know what comfort and happiness feels like, and it doesn't look like that. And so is me pouring more gasoline on that of like, well, what gives you the right to treat me like that? Does that help the situation, or is it, would it help you if you were fired up about it?
Right.
Probably not. And so, it just kind of helps you not take things so personally when you see that there is a story behind it that is probably nothing like what you've written in your head with what you've seen with your own 2 eyes, which is your own truth. But that's what I tell my girls is your eyes lie to you all the time, and so does your mind. And so question it. Ask yourself, is this really
I remember
important?
I had this season when I had Ellie where I was dealing with a lot of pain, and we were trying to get to the bottom of it. And it was a long time of dealing with pain from recovery from a emergency cesarean, difficult childbirth. And I remember at some point it just dawning on me, I understand how somebody can just have a bad attitude. It wears on you to be in pain all the time. And all of a sudden it's like I was short-tempered and I was just cranky. And I just felt cranky about life. And it had nothing to do with the people in my life. It had everything to do with the pain that wouldn't subside in my body. And I think about our health here in the States, and I think how many people are assholes simply for the fact that they don't feel good. And it doesn't excuse it, but I got to understand there's more going on.
Yeah.
And now there's a second part to this. When it comes to not taking something personally, and this goes back to this struggle, when you see, when Miss Fix-It here is observing parents making choices that are potentially negatively impacting the kids, I understand that is really, really hard to allow. We want to protect our kids. We want to, keep them from any kind of pain and struggle and hurt if we can. However, we do not get to define someone else's journey. We have a friend that we have met in Nashville, Kevin Welch and Kieran Kane are singers from Nashville, and they have a song called "You Can't Save Everybody," and we've sung it a lot. That's you can't save everybody. Everybody don't want to be saved.
Yep.
And I have a link to that one on the blog as well. And sometimes somebody's not ready to be saved. Sometimes you've not earned the right to be their savior, and sometimes they need the journey. And as we're facing here, just my dad's situation and us walking my dad home, I think about what things have prepared us for this that were quote unquote unwanted parts of our growing up. My brother, has struggled with addiction, and he has had a fascination with the spiritual world. And this has taken him on all kinds of paths with all kinds of drugs and different medicines, and also with shamans and with the spiritual realm and in indigenous cultures and with ceremonies and all of these things that he has done in his journey. Some of them good and helpful for him, some of them very, very destructive for him. And to the point of him almost dying multiple times in his life. With all of that, though, as much as I sure as heck did not want my brother to go down the path of addiction and struggle that he did in his life, his struggle, his stories, and his journey have brought him full circle to a space right now where there is no one else that can step in to this journey with Dad and have the empathy and the connection that this father and son have now. And I mean, Jared even said, my brother said the other day that he felt like he's found this new friendship with my father. And we're not talking a talking friendship, because my father's passed lucid conversations. And so it was literally the spiritual connection and the spiritual walk and the journey and navigating his medicines. And my brother has just fallen into this, essentially being an end of life doula. And it's such a sweet spot that he's kind of stumbling into and realizing, wow, my whole life has prepped me for this. In our lives, we've lost 3 loved ones this year, and each one, again, unwanted, not like we desired these, yet each one brought up conversations about death and grief with our family and for how to process it and how to navigate it with our girls. And now here we are navigating the death of their papa, the person that they have had the closest relationship with out of all of these people that have passed this year. And the tools that we've worked through as a family this year have so helped us now. Right. Again, I didn't want that journey, but it's equipped us better for what we are now.
And so it's just kind of a reminder that while sometimes we see things that can create pain and suffering in somebody's life, that pain and suffering can be a real, I almost think of it as like an atomic kind of setup. It can either fuel magnificent change, like, atomic energy can fuel submarines and fuel cities, but it can also destroy the world. And so, it can destroy your life if you end up just kind of staying stuck in one place. And so, it is it's a great catalyst for change.
Right. I mean, I would not wish trauma, suicide, divorce, mental illness, addiction, or any of these things on anyone else. Yet my own personal experience with each one of those that I just mentioned has paved the way for more empathy and awareness and ability to serve others in a way that I never would have if I had not had those experiences in my life. And so even when we're seeing other families where we're seeing that this may be having a negative impact on the children, where yes, we want to be eyes and look out for children that are in horribly abusive situations or anything like that, we also recognize that a lot of times it may be that, it wasn't the best parenting move. Maybe the parents just had an off day. We've done it. I mean, I know that there are times that somebody could look at our house and go, ooh, they didn't do that well. Yeah, I mean, I will have to admit that. I think that we all do. So it could just be an off day. And it could be that part of this child's journey is bringing awareness to something that happened in their home and learning and being able to overcome that. And that's part of their journey of overcoming and the growth that can happen when they choose to, like you said, not sit in it, but to move out of it. So with that, how can we do that? The first thing that we can do when we're navigating people is not come in with the agenda of how we're going to fix them or how to make it right. But best piece of advice that I got as a young mama, meet them where they are. Whether that's the child or the person or whoever it is that you're navigating, meet them where they are and seek to understand what you're sitting in. Because again, we don't know. Is that person in the middle of deep stages of grieving? Is their body in pain? Is their head somewhere completely elsewhere? Or is this really, just about the one incident that you're feeling the judgment for?
Yeah. Well, and one trick that I found that works really, really well when you're trying to meet somebody where they're at is to be curious and ask a lot of questions, and not in like a
accusatory or interview.
Yeah, like tell me where you were at 12:30 at night on last Saturday. But more of just like, I'll give you an example. When I was selling real estate, and I would meet a couple and I would interview them before I'd work with somebody, and I'd get them into a bunch of houses early so I could kind of flush out some of the drama early on and clear the air on a clear direction so we could move quickly, because that was what the market demanded. And in doing so, I would hear somebody say something that I knew would be a real roadblock to a process, or that probably wasn't that big of a deal, but they were making it a big deal. And I would just get curious about that and say, tell me more about why that's important to you. And sometimes what they would end up doing, quite honestly, is as they're speaking, rationalize themselves out of the situation right into the, well, you know what, it'd probably be better if we did have a garage. You're right, Jim. And we'll do that house. And so it suddenly becomes their idea, where you don't come at it with, look, you need to think about this. You need a car. You need I know you love this thing about it, but you need to think about the car and the garage and what Jim wants. And suddenly the defense, the whole system changes.
Right.
I'm being told how I'm wrong and how to live, and that you've got it all figured out, versus, walking me down the lane of, I hadn't thought about that. And it's like helping somebody ripen to the thought of, there's other options other than what you're saying or seeing. And maybe you're just saying stuff for fun, or maybe that's something you truly feel, and we need to figure that out. And if it is something you truly feel, is it something that you truly believe?
And so you didn't know that I'd been laying the groundwork for you all those years before you got into real estate, by me just saying things off the top of my head without any thought process. And your love for me was asking me to clarify.
So help me, love.
And then I would start speaking more and realize what that initial thought that flew out of my mouth had not been processed at all, and I would backtrack.
You're just now seeing those.
See, we just lay the foundations for things.
There you go.
So recognizing that, being curious and asking for further clarification. It's not prove your point. It's more, can you help me understand this? You could make them kind of rationalize themselves right out of it.
Or you may just realize they're wrong, and that's okay. Yeah. It's okay for people to be wrong. I mean, that's one thing that I've learned, is that for every way that you believe, there is somebody out there that believes just as vigorously the exact opposite.
Mm-hmm. So another thing on this note of meeting people where they are, I put another video link. It's actually embedded in the post, so you can watch the videos right there. But it's by Brene Brown, and it's on empathy, and I love it. It's just a short little cartoon graphic thing of her explaining the difference between sympathy and empathy. And there's a part of it where basically the person who's kind of in the deepest, darkest hole is literally in this hole. And so sympathy would kind of be looking down into the hole and being like, hey, that sucks for you down there. Sorry.
You're right. It does. Thanks for reminding me.
And then, at least you don't have this happening. And, you can at least them or try to walk them out of it or something like that. You're literally not even at their same perspective. And I loved how she did it, where it was looking down into a hole, because I thought about, when you really talk about empathy, it's meeting them where they are. It's literally being at the same perspective that they are. Not that you're necessarily experiencing the same pain, but you've gone somewhere in yourself to find a connection, to recognize where they are at, not looking down from a pedestal up at the top.
Yeah, and sometimes they're in a position where they feel quite out of control, and they're just dealing with what has come.
All right, so our third one here is the final one, and this is called the Compassionate Heart Philosophy. And in doing this blog post, I found that out of all of my 334 blog posts and podcast episodes, I'm missing one, and it is the Compassionate Heart Philosophy episode 212. Mm-hmm. So I think my web guy just retrieved it for me, so it's back up on the website now. I linked to it in this blog post. this was something that we kind of stumbled upon and created as our philosophy. And the shortened version of the Compassionate Hearts philosophy is love without ownership. My more in-depth philosophy says this: I believe in sharing love and compassion for all with no strings attached. I believe love can have a ripple effect and an impact simply by us giving from a full cup with nothing in return. I don't have to claim something as mine in order to care for it. I care for it because it is a part of this beautiful world and life we're in. And I trust that love will carry on beyond my control. We've used this for animals and for children. We can use it for anything that we care about, where we see the injustices and we see what should happen, and we feel helpless because we can't just take it in. In our travels, we had a lot of opportunities with stray animals and injured animals, and we had to learn how to not just take them all in. That if we took in everything, that we would ultimately be giving from an empty cup, doing a disservice to all of them and hurting them even more. And so we knew we had to draw some limits around that. When we were navigating some loved ones going through a divorce and their children were in a very rough situation, I wanted more than anything to just come and scoop up those children and take them out of that. Yet, legally, there's some issues around that. You can't just kidnap a child. I couldn't just do that. What I could do, though, was offer a safe haven of love and give them a feeling of peace and sanctuary when they entered our home.
Right. And when you check in with those kids, a year or two after the whole process, they're thankful that they had gone through and gotten to the other side. There's peace now where there wasn't before, because, what was before was hidden chaos, and the divorce was just
And now they're seeing they're seeing the path from the other side. And that's, again, going back to that hero's journey. That was a part of their journey.
It's part of their story forever. And if you had come in and swooped them out of that,
there would have been a disconnect for that, because that was their journey.
Yes.
Right. We don't want to take people, animals, plants, anything out of their journey of their own growth and struggle. You look at anything in nature, and struggle is a part of it. And that's us as human beings too. And that means not everything is going to go right. Not everybody is going to treat everybody okay all the time. We have to look at how we can make an impact. So instead of making a judgment, how can you make an impact? Instead of pushing your words of advice, let your life speak. Are you living life in parallel to them? Because unless you're in an exact identical situation and you have the exact same personality style, you are going to handle things differently than someone else. So focusing on what is in your control and how you choose to show up, how you choose to respond, what do you take responsibility for in your own life? How willing are you to work on yourself or admit what you're learning or you don't know? All of these are the ways that are going to make the impact, way more than the words. I know I have gotten advice from people who have some very beautiful words that I didn't even listen to because I saw the fruit in their actions, good or bad. And that's the part I focused on.
Well, I've got a quote that I've used a lot, that actions are your only possessions in this world, right? So it just kind of reminds you that the way you make people feel is how you're cared for.
Right. So we can't save everybody. Not everybody wants to be saved. We may not be that person's hero. It may be someone else's opportunity later on. It may be that this is what is going to give them the awareness or the empathy in the long run for someone else. So think about these three things. How am I showing up? Am I practicing what I preach and walking the walk? Have I earned the right to have the answer? Is this person seeking me out and asking it? And have I met them where they are first and simply shown love and peace? Or am I owning the agenda and the end result? So consider these when judgment rears its face in your life and determine how helpful it really is. There are so many ways that we can be a light to others without shooting all over them. So think about how you can do that from within, and recognizing that our ripple effect from our words and our actions in our life are going to show way more than the good intentions of our words to make it right. We are all on this journey and ripen at different times, like you said. So the more we can offer those opportunities of kindness and light versus should and need, the more we can really grow together, learn together, evolve together,
Go on.
and celebrate how the uniqueness in each of us strengthens all of us. Namaste.
1, 2, 3. Up with the rising sun, already on the run. Mama says namaste. Life is a tangled mess, and you don't have to stress. Mama says namaste. 'Cause today I will stand up